So yes, I had seen a little notice in a booklet called Into the Next Millennium, which the GSCI had published. It was a 5-year plan on projects that they wanted to do in the next 5 years. And one of them was to document the life stories of prominent elders. And I thought that was a really interesting project. And when I had reached out to Ejuk, who was then the research director, and asked her how the project was going, she basically said, well, it's not. And if you want to be the lead researcher on it, you can go right ahead. And so I thought, oh, how exciting. And, you know, how hard can it really be to interview some wonderful elders and write their stories into a book? This should be really, really fun and really not too hard at all. And I really looked forward to it. I don't think any of us realized that it would actually take us 20 years to actually write everything and get it published. It was a big project. Originally, when we first started this project, we envisioned it maybe a series of little tiny books, maybe one of each elder that would go into the schools. But once the elders started telling their stories, we realized that this speaks to a really, really wide audience, both Gwich'in and non-Gwich'in, you know, Canadian, international. And so how do you balance that? And so the scholarly chapter at the very end talks about the scholarship that went in and the decisions that we made to make this research work and to present it. And I'm hoping that it's an invaluable and best practice for anthropology and ethnography and Indigenous studies. Northern studies is really what, you know, scholarship. I really hope that it's a sort of a new and a fresh approach to having these stories told.
Now that I am choosing to go where I'm celebrated, I'm able to fall in love with the game all over again, and I'm able to find like-minded people who have the same goals as me. Or even better, we don't always agree, but we challenge one another and try to find a way to do things better for everybody. And I mean, those moments are few and far between, but by and large, they're the only reasons that I'm still here and doing this and finding purpose in it.
So Jonathon, what does it mean to have this collection that's diverse, that takes us into all different corners of the sport? What does it mean to have that out there? And who do you hope really picks this up and takes a good look at it?
We wanted it to be something that becomes accessible to anybody who reads it and someone who has a passion or an interest in hockey. And I think for us, that was what we wanted. We wanted to broaden the scope. We wanted to hear the stories. We wanted to make sure those were all included because those were important. And it's just not about research. And I think that's what we worked for. And to be honest, I guess to go back to your question, who do we want to read? We want everybody to read it.
So the book itself, Separation Anxiety, talks a lot about my own experience of immigration from Ireland in 2012 and the subsequent years after. So it talks a lot about that sense of loss of your culture and identity and family unit and all those support systems that you've relied on in your whole life so far. And it puts that against the background of a long-term relationship falling apart. So there's kind of those two main narratives that start off fairly separate, and then, spoiler alert, by the end of the manuscript, they start kind of interweaving a bit more and more because, you know, just like in real life, nothing happens in a vacuum. Stuff like homesickness and loneliness is all intertwined with the rest of the stuff that's going on in your life.
So I'll introduce myself and then I'll pass it on to Tim and then our contributors. So I am a professor of design at Syracuse University in the US, although I am Canadian. I am an Albertan. I do have a Bachelor of Industrial Design from the University of Alberta. And I'm really interested in Canadian design studies and also design in the province of Alberta. I'm really interested in basically design communities and everything to do with that. So local practices, local design economies, all that. So this project actually really spawned from my graduate research where I was looking at a history of design in Alberta, and that got me really thinking, and that got Tim thinking about, well, how can we kind of leverage this further? So the feeling we had was that there's a lack of articulated knowledge about local design industries. I think everybody kind of has an idea about what's going on, but it's not necessarily being shared. It's not necessarily shared. And it's not necessarily kind of brought together and being able to be transmitted to new generations of designers. So that was kind of the idea behind this book project, that there's a lot of great work that needs to be celebrated, but also some fundamental questions like who's doing what? Where are people finding success? Where are people struggling if they're struggling? How are people navigating local global contexts? Like what does it mean to design in Alberta versus to design in Ontario or New York State or Johannesburg, so those kind of questions as well. So the book basically is kind of our attempt at answering these kind of questions and putting our first sort of one of the first collections of thought on design in the province of Alberta.
It's a book of essays and interventions written by scholars who are based in a wide range of humanities disciplines, from English, my own home discipline, to philosophy, Ada's home discipline, to anthropology, musicology, medieval studies, and more. The book arose from questions about the methods that we use in our classrooms in order to support our students in their learning, and more specifically, where those methods become dissonant or discordant or even disruptive, particularly when put into cross-disciplinary conversations. My despair was also linked to a dawning recognition that my own thinking had become disciplined according to particular sets of normative assumptions within the discipline of English, and that I was complicit in foisting these assumptions onto my own students in turn. Dissonant methods, though, is much more than these concerns. As my co-editor Ada puts it at the opening of her introduction, she writes, quote, "Methods animate the world of university classrooms as organizing logics that compel and constrain interactions among teachers and students," close quote. So that twinned pairing, compel and constrain, lies, I think, at the heart of this project. How have the methods particular to disciplines compelled students to create new concepts? How have these same methods, though, constrained students and obstructed new discoveries?
The book is about 10 formative days that I believe shaped modern Canada over the past 50 years, from 1970 to 2020. The whole premise behind the book is that someone will read it and say, well, that's interesting, but what about that date? Why didn't you include that? And that's the goal, is that someone will do that, and then they're suggesting another date, and they have to argue for it and articulate why they think that's the date, an important date, and in so doing, they enter the conversation. So that's what I think the book is ultimately about, is to try to create a national conversation about Canada, important days that have shaped it, and with the assumption that the 10 days I've chosen would certainly not be everyone else's dates. So again, I can't express my gratitude enough to the press and everyone that I work there with. We're consummate professionals, and I highly recommend it. So thank you very much.